There is a moment you don't prepare for. It slips in while you are doing something ordinary, and you catch yourself reacting differently than you used to. Something that once mattered no longer does. Something that once felt familiar now feels distant. And for a second, you pause, not because something is wrong, but because something inside you no longer lines up with who you were. You realize you are not who you used to be, and you do not know yet what that means for your life. Most people expect growth to feel like improvement, like becoming more confident, more certain, more put together. But identity change rarely arrives that way. It often feels disorienting instead. It feels like standing in a familiar room where the furniture has been rearranged. Nothing is actually wrong, yet your body keeps noticing that something does not fit the way it used to. You might look at old photos and feel a strange distance. Not dislike, not embarrassment. Just the realization that the person in that image lived by rules you no longer follow. Different needs, different fears, different definitions of success. And that can be unsettling because part of you still believes continuity is proof of stability. When identity changes, resistance usually comes first. You try to return to old habits, old versions of ambition, old ways of relating to people. Not because they still fit, but because they once worked. The mind prefers what feels familiar over what feels honest, especially when honesty does not come with clear instructions. So you question yourself. You wonder if you are losing motivation, if you are becoming less driven, if something inside you is fading. But what is actually happening is simpler than that. Your inner priorities are changing faster than your life has caught up. And the discomfort comes from trying to live an updated inner life inside an outdated structure. As this gap grows, another tension appears. You begin to notice that people respond to you differently. Expectations linger where they no longer belong. And old dynamics feel heavier than they used to. Without realizing it, you start managing how much of your change you show. You soften certain truths, you hold parts of yourself back, and you perform familiarity to avoid questions you cannot answer yet. Not because you are hiding, but because you are still figuring yourself out. And being misunderstood can feel threatening when you are not fully sure who you are becoming. This is often the hardest part to admit. Your inner world has changed, but your life still reflects an older version of you. Your routines were built for someone else. Your goals were chosen by a different set of values, and your schedule still asks you to show up as the person you no longer are. So you move through your days with a strange tension, doing things you once wanted and maintaining structures you once fought for. Something feels misaligned, not wrong enough to escape, not right enough to stay fully present. Many people doubt themselves here, assuming the discomfort means ingratitude or failure, when often it simply means your inner life has outgrown the shape of your days. There is grief here, even when the change is healthy, because you are letting go of a version of yourself that endured more than it should have. That version pushed through because stopping felt unsafe and believed worth had to be earned through strain. Not because that version was wrong, but because it protected you when you did not know another way. Letting go of that identity can feel like losing evidence that what you survived mattered and that your effort meant something. And when that identity loosens, a question surfaces. If I am not that person anymore, what was all of that for? There is also a pull backward, because in moments of stress, the old version of you can feel tempting. Not because it was better, but because it was predictable and came with clear rules. Familiar patterns come with scripts. You know how to succeed there and how to be seen. Stepping away can feel like standing without armor, even when that armor was heavy and no longer fit. There is a loneliness that comes with changing faster than the people around you. Not because they are holding you back, but because the language you used to share no longer translates. Conversations that once felt easy now require translation. And relationships that once felt natural now take effort you do not always have to give. You find yourself explaining less, not out of secrecy, But because some internal change cannot be put into words, others will understand unless they have lived it too. And this can create distance, even in closeness. People may still care about you, but they are responding to a version of you that no longer fully exists. And being seen without being understood can feel more exhausting than being alone. This does not mean the relationship has failed. It means the terms have changed. And renegotiating them while you are still figuring yourself out can feel like more than you can hold at once. What often gets missed is this. You do not change because you failed to be who you were. You change because your system learned what it needed to survive. Your nervous system adapts, your sense of safety evolves, and your tolerance for strain decreases. Things that once felt exciting may now feel draining, and things that once felt impressive may now feel hollow. This is not regression. It is recalibration, and the confusion comes from living between identities. As this awareness settles, another fear often rises. The fear that you notice too late. You look back at years spent becoming someone, building a life, and enduring things because they felt necessary at the time. A question creeps in. What if I have already invested too much to change? This fear freezes people not because they lack courage, but because they mistake endurance for meaning and responsibility. It is important to say this clearly. You are allowed to outgrow versions of yourself that once kept you functional but not fulfilled. And you can want a life that costs you less internally. Growth does not always arrive as confidence. Sometimes it arrives as hesitation or fatigue, as an inability to continue betraying yourself in familiar ways. When you stop forcing alignment with who you were, fear appears, but so does relief. That moment when you realize you are not who you used to be is not a loss. It is information. A signal that something inside you has been paying attention, learning, adjusting, and protecting you before you consciously understood what was happening. You do not need to rush into naming who you are now. You do not need to justify your change. And you do not need to resolve this moment immediately. Some chapters end without clarity, and some identities fade without ceremony. That does not mean you are lost. It often means you are becoming more honest than you have ever been allowed to be. And if this moment feels unclear right now, that does not mean you are behind. It means you are noticing where your life no longer fits the person you have become. That awareness does not ask you to decide everything today. It only asks you to stop ignoring what you already know.